Welcome. I'd really appreciate if you could drop a comment with your thoughts and reactions as you listen. Your feedback helps me craft better stories for you. It was well past midnight when I found myself aimlessly drifting through the hidden depths of the dark web. I knew I should have gone to sleep hours ago, but my restless mind was awash with endless curiosities, propelling me deeper into uncharted corners of the internet. That's when I came across the live stream. At first glance, it seemed like just another silly prank, some poorly shot snuff film meant to shock viewers. I clicked the link half expecting to see badly acted gore or hoax special effects. But from the very first frame, I knew this was no joke. The video opened on a dimly lit room, bare except for a wooden chair bolted to the concrete floor. A woman was seated upon it, wrists bound tightly behind her back. Even through the grainy video quality, the raw terror on her face was unmistakable. She thrashed and twisted, muffled cries emerging from the duct tape plastered over her lips. In the corner, a massive snake slowly uncoiled from its nest. Its sleek scales glistened under the dim lighting as it slithered towards its prey. A reticulated python, easily over 15 feet in length. As it curled around the woman's legs, she redoubled her efforts to break free, body heaving with panicked sobs. I wanted to close the video, to pretend I never saw what was about to unfold, but somehow my eyes remained fixed on the screen, transfixed in horror. The snake's muscles contracted with deliberate, mesmerizing precision, wrapping tighter around its struggling victim with each revolution. Slowly, agonizingly, it constricted its coils. The woman's muffled screams transformed into tortured wheezes as the python's embrace tightened. Her face was purpling, eyes bulging from their sockets, while she vainly gasped for breath. I watched, paralyzed, as the light faded from her eyes until at last her struggling ceased. Only then did the snake relent its grip, leaving her lifeless body twisted and broken in its grasp. When the video ended, I sat petrified, my mind reeling in refusal to accept what I had just witnessed was real. It must have been faked, just ultra realistic special effects meant to shock the dark corners of the web. But the raw agony etched on the woman's face as she suffocated replayed in my mind's eye, lingering long after I forced myself away from the laptop's glow. That night, sleep offered no refuge. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her final tormented moments on repeat, her haunting stare searing into my guilty conscience. By morning's light, I vowed to forget the terrible vision and convince myself it was all an illusion. But deep down, I couldn't silence the gnawing certainty that what I saw had been horribly, sickeningly real. The morning news did little to ease my troubled mind. Splayed across the headlines was the grim discovery of a young woman's body in a wooded ravine just outside town. Police were investigating the suspicious death and appealing to the public for any information. I watched the report in numbed disbelief, my suspicions slowly hardening into dreadful certainty. The twisted angles of her partially twisted limbs, encircled by deepening bruises, matched all too well what I had witnessed on screen the night before. A familiar sense of paralysis crept over me, rooting me in place as my breath quickened in panic. This was no hoax. The video had shown a real murder playing out in disturbingly vivid detail. And I was the sole witness left with the only evidence that could help bring her killer to justice. All morning, images of the woman's final agonized moments replayed in an endless loop inside my head. Alongside them rose a fresh torrent of self-loathing for my pathetic inaction. If only I had found the presence of mind to alert authorities right away. Perhaps they could have reached her in time. Now her death was permanently etched on my conscience, an unshakable reminder of the true depravity lurking beneath the surface of the online world I frequented. I knew I had to come forward, no matter the personal costs. The woman deserved for her killer to be caught and face consequences. Steeling my resolve, I picked up my phone with trembling hands and dialed the police tip line, only for my determination to crumble at the prompt tone. What would they think of me after discovering how I came across the footage? Admitting to my secret online habits risked exposing a shameful side better kept private. Yet staying silent went against every shred of conscience I had left. As night fell once more, I tossed and turned endlessly. Tormented by indecision, sleep refused to offer sanctuary from my guilt, which mingled chaotically with fears of reprisal. By dawn, exhaustion and anxiety had worn away what little willpower I had mustered. Another day passed with the woman's killer still at large, and the police no closer to answers. All because of my paralyzing hesitation. But when the morning news showed no new leads, desperate hope gave way to a fresh wave of self-loathing. I knew I couldn't live with the guilt of allowing another innocent life to be lost due to my selfish silence. Justice had to be served, for her and for my own tattered psyche. Steeling my resolve, I picked up my phone to contact the detective in charge, dreading the hard truths I would have to share and the darkness it risked exposing within me. It was time to face whatever consequences awaited and aid in catching a murderer, no matter the personal cost. My conversation with Detective Ross had gone about as well as I anticipated. Her initial disbelief melted into skepticism as I recounted my strange tale, from stumbling upon the grisly video stream to realizing its true depravity. Producing the footage did little to change her expression. It was too grainy and obscure to clearly identify the woman or surroundings. My evident discomfort under her scrutinizing gaze raised fresh doubts about my story's veracity. When I admitted how I accessed the dark corners of the web, her questions took on a harder edge. Ross was less interested in pursuing obscure online leads and more preoccupied with how a promising young student got mixed up in such depraved circles. Her judgmental remarks chipped away at my already fragile nerves. By the time I left the station, I was more troubled than when I arrived. My only clue, the disturbing snuff video, had proved useless. Meanwhile, my foray into unfiltered corners of the internet now aroused the detective's distrust instead of gratitude. That night, unable to cast off lingering uncertainties, I found myself once more drawn into the nether regions of the dark web, powered by desperation and a mix of morbid curiosity. Carefully avoiding overtly criminal marketplaces, I infiltrated obscure discussion channels and stumbled upon uncensored speculation around my case. There, amidst the usual evils, I found scattered clues that gave me pause. References to familiar symbols adorning the killer's lair conjured distant memories of past discoveries, too grotesque to fully surface. With growing dread, I pieced together cryptic signs pointing towards a prolific criminal, previously only rumored to roam the darkest underbelly of the web's secretly sinister infrastructure. His methods were disturbingly unique and matched all too well what I had witnessed. If the speculations held truth, this criminal's digital fingerprint stretched back years across multiple gruesome acts with complete impunity. Thanks to specialized anonymizing techniques, I'd inadvertently uncovered a depraved monster far more dangerous than the police anticipated. Yet approaching Ross with these unnerving leads risked having my entire story doubted as the concoction of an obsessed online lurker. I knew I had to proceed carefully to gain her trust, and time was not a luxury when a serial killer remained unrestrained. So I delved still further into the depths, following twisted trails that might offer proof to convince the skeptical detective of the true menace haunting our city's shadows. But it was a path wrought with its own insidious perils. Sleep was a stranger as I tossed and turned, wrestling with the ramifications of my disturbing discoveries. Each time I closed my eyes, visions of the murder played on repeat alongside fresh nightmares fooled by my burrowing into nether regions, best left undisturbed. By dawn, exhaustion overwhelmed my frazzled nerves. I knew I could no longer go it alone. The evil I had inadvertently unearthed was beyond any amateur sleuthing. Summoning my last reserves of resolve, I dragged myself to the police station to lay out all I had learned to the doubtful Detective Ross, no matter the personal costs. Retelling my unsettling findings, I struggled to keep my voice steady under Ross' hardened gaze. Uncensored speculation on criminal haunts. Obscure references fitting past atrocities barely documented. Anonymous hints at depraved acts escaping all consequence for years. Her skepticism seemed ready to boil over into outright contempt. Yet some newly uncovered clues struck a different chord. Grisly symbols found at multiple crime scenes matched those scrawled upon a dark forum's most depraved discussions. And fresh missing person reports bore chilling resemblances to past unsolved cases, haunting this whole region's history. Layers of implication were peeling back to expose a long-lurking horror far beyond our town's borders. Ra's demeanor shifted, her doubt slowly dissolving into a steely resolve. "Keep going," she urged. "Tell me everything. Leave nothing unchecked." I saw in her eyes a newfound respect and gratitude for shining light into the realm of nightmares, keeping her up night after night. Her radio crackled. An urgent report had just come in. A jogger stumbled upon a makeshift grave in the woods, half concealing mangled remains matching our latest missing girl. Dark clues etched upon crumbling bark gave even seasoned detectives pause. Ross locked eyes with me. "We're bringing you in. No more going alone. You've given us leads no database could. Let's catch this monster together before he takes another." A glimmer of hope pierced my guilt, banishing shadows clawing at my soul. At long last, I had convinced the one person able to stop further innocent blood from staining this town's haunted soil. The nightmare was coming to an end. But first, the true hunt must begin. With Ross by my side, I felt emboldened, but still drained after relentless nights dominated by terror rather than rest. Her dogged perseverance kept us pursuing every lead as the killer's trail grew warmer. Finally, a twisted online alias was traced to a rundown property miles out of town. With backup ready, we burst through the door to find an escape already underway. Tire tracks fled into the dense brush as an eerie calm pervaded the ramshackle lair. Our suspect was canny, but Ross was tenacious, methodically searching for signs. She pieced clues scaffolding a disturbing profile. Her triumph shone through exhaustion as each new discovery brought us closer to cornering our prey before he could vanish for good. Dawn found us racing down back roads, closing in on infrared signals emanating from deep woods. As his vehicle came into view, our suspect abandoned stealth, instead choosing a final twisted stand. His form emerged wielding weaponry, meant to end the chase once and for all. Gunfire erupted through the tranquil forest as our teams returned controlled fire. A strangled cry pierced the smoke, followed by an ominous thud. We emerged from the thicket to find the suspect sprawled in the leaf litter, nursing a wound just short of fatal. As the ambulance hauled him away in chains, I observed with mixed relief and unease. His face was obscured, but I knew this monster would never prey on another innocent soul. Justice was served, yet what I had witnessed could never be unseen. In the aftermath, Ross thanked me for partnership beyond the call of duty. My nightmares faded as guilt dissolved, replaced by resilience forged through facing darkness within and without. While what was seen could never be unseen, together, we ensured others would be spared the same torment. The costs of my curiosity were redeemed. A hunter of men was stopped for good. I went home that day in peace, ready to leave haunting shadows in the past. Mike stared blankly at the dark web forums on his computer screen. The usual bustle of activity had given way to panicked speculation in the wake of the market shutdowns. For over a year, he had quietly built a steady client base selling prescription pills and research chemicals on the anonymous markets. It was low-risk money that allowed him to pay the bills and avoid the 9-to-5 grind. But now, his livelihood was gone in an instant, vanished without a trace, along with the marketplaces themselves. Mike scrolled endlessly through doomsday theories and conspiracy ramblings, looking for any shred of truth among the noise. A nagging sense of unease took hold. If the markets had truly been seized by law enforcement as some claimed, how long before they started closing in on individual sellers too? Mike knew better than most how easy it would be to trace transactions back to his identity. He snapped his laptop shut with finality, deciding it was time to disappear as well. Paranoia had always been his survival instinct in this line of work, and right now it was screaming at him to destroy all evidence before the authorities came knocking. Methodically, Mike began wiping his computer drives using military-grade data erasure software. He watched impassively as strings of random characters scrolled endlessly across the screen, obliterating every trace of his digital activities. Next came the physical items. In a small fire pit behind his home, Mike fed packaging materials, ledgers of sales figures, and scraps of address labels into the flames. The paper curled and blackened, releasing a casrid smoke into the night sky. Only when nothing incriminating remained did Mike allow himself to relax, if only slightly. He had covered his tracks thoroughly, as always. No one would be able to tie the anonymous dealer Cryptsoronymus to his real identity so easily. In the coming days, Mike fell into a restless routine. He avoided contact with any associates from his past dealings and remained constantly vigilant for any signs of surveillance. Sleep came in fitful bursts as unwelcome thoughts intruded. One afternoon, a delivery arrived while Mike was out, an unmarked package with no return address sitting innocuously on his front porch. Immediately, his guard went up. Mike hadn't placed or received any orders recently, due to the market closures. Backing cautiously into his home, Mike X-rayed the package, using equipment purchased solely for detecting contraband or tracking devices. The contents were unremarkable, but a small blinking light caught his eye embedded within. His blood ran cold. Someone had sent him a gift, an insidious GPS beacon designed to monitor his every move. Mike's paranoia was justified after all. Someone out there was actively hunting him down like prey. In a panic, Mike donned gloves and dismantled the device. He had to know if any other surprises lay in wait. A meticulous search of his property soon revealed a second tracker affixed discreetly under his vehicle. Darkness was falling as Mike scrambled to remove the evidence of his discovery. But in his haste, he thought he noticed an unfamiliar sedan idling silently at the end of his street with tinted windows. Had they been watching all along? The realization sent Mike's anxiety skyrocketing. He was no longer safe here, not with unseen eyes following his every move. It was time to disappear into the night, with no idea who was pursuing or why. But one thing was clear. There would be no refuge as long as he stayed in one place. Under the cover of nightfall, Mike packed a single backpack with essential supplies and cash before slipping silently out the rear door of his home. He abandoned his vehicle, not wanting to risk leading pursuers directly to him, and instead melted into the shadows on foot. His paranoia guided each furtive movement as Mike navigated the back roads and trails away from prying eyes. Only when several miles separated him from his former safe house did he dare slow his frantic pace. Exhaustion pulled at his limbs, but adrenaline kept Mike alert to every distant sound. He had to keep moving under cover of darkness, putting as much distance as possible between himself and whoever had sent those trackers. By dawn, Mike emerged onto the outskirts of a seedy motel situated down a lonely frontage road. He paid in cash up front for a week's stay, giving a false name and keeping interaction with the night clerk to a minimum. Collapsing onto the lumpy bed, Mike's exhaustion overtook him into a fitful sleep. Images of shadowy figures closing in haunted his dreams, jolting him awake in a cold sweat every few hours. In the grimy room, days blurred into a haze of restless pacing. Mike kept the curtains drawn and outside contact to a bare minimum. He scoured the dark web using encrypted browsers, searching for any clues as to who had targeted him or why. But the markets remained eerily silent, and his anonymous profiles yielded no new threats or messages. Mike began to second-guess if he was truly being hunted at all, or if his paranoia had simply spiraled out of control in the aftermath of the shutdowns. One night, a sharp knock at the door shattered Mike's uneasy musings. He froze, every nerve on high alert as muffled voices conversed just outside. Slowly, Mike peered through the peephole to find two unfriendly-looking men loitering in the dingy hallway. Before he could react, the door was kicked open with a splintering crack. Mike stumbled backward, coming face to face with the intruders who now blocked his only exit. "We know you've been dealing. Crypts Anonymous. Time to pay up what you owe," the taller man sneered, advancing on Mike with menacing intent. His companion followed suit, cutting off any means of escape. Mike's mind raced frantically for an explanation or bargain to placate the thugs, but came up empty. These were not the kind of people one could reason with. A tense standoff ensued, each side sizing the other up for weaknesses to exploit. Mike knew he was badly outmatched if things turned violent. With no real means to defend himself, he had to talk his way out of this confrontation somehow, alive and in one piece. "Look, I don't know what you think I owe or who sent you, but you've got the wrong guy. I'm not dealing anymore since the markets went down," Mike replied, keeping his tone even but firm. The men exchanged a look, clearly not believing his claims of innocence. "Don't play dumb with us. Word is you've been holding out, dealing directly to keep the profits for yourself. We're just here to collect our share of the business." Mike racked his brain, trying to place if he'd ever crossed paths with these goons before. As far as he knew, he had no outstanding debts or enemies from his past dealings. Someone was clearly using him as a pawn in their own game. "I swear, you've got the wrong information. No one sent me, and I'm not dealing anymore. Period. If you don't believe me, then just take what cash I've got and leave," Mike bargained, inching his hand slowly toward his wallet. A tense standoff ensued, each side weighing the other for any sign of deception or weakness. Mike knew he was dangerously outmatched if this confrontation turned violent, with no real means to defend himself so far from help. He could only hope his show of compliance, combined with a lack of any visible product or money, would be enough to satisfy the thugs. Mike steeled himself, prepared to fight tooth and nail if pushed further. But for now, all he could do was stall for time until an opening presented itself to escape this trap. In the dim, tension-filled motel room, Mike and the two menacing intruders stood in a precarious stalemate. The air was thick with unspoken threats and the possibility of violence. Mike, though outmatched, maintained a facade of calmness, his mind racing for any viable escape route. The taller of the two men, sensing Mike's desperation, took a step forward. "Enough games, Crypts Anonymous. You're coming with us. You're coming with us. We have instructions to bring you in no matter what condition." Mike's heart pounded in his chest. He realized these men weren't mere thugs. They were enforcers, possibly sent by a powerful figure in the dark web underworld he had crossed unknowingly. His past, it seemed, finally caught up to him. As the men advanced, Mike feigned a move towards his wallet. In a swift motion, he grabbed a nearby lamp and hurled it at the window, shattering the glass. The sudden noise and confusion bought him precious seconds. He bolted towards the door, shoving past the intruders. The hallway was dimly lit and empty. Mike sprinted, his only thought to put as much distance between himself and the motel. Behind him, he could hear the shouts of the men, but adrenaline propelled him forward. He emerged into the cold night air, his breath coming in ragged gasps. With no clear destination in mind, Mike kept moving. He dodged into alleys, scaled fences, and navigated through back streets. He had to lose his pursuers in the maze of the city. After what felt like hours, he ducked into a darkened doorway, his body trembling from exertion and fear. As he caught his breath, The grim reality of his situation sank in. He was now a fugitive, hunted and alone. The life he had known was over. Mike realized that his dealings on the dark web had been a double-edged sword. It had given him an escape from a mundane life, but at a cost far greater than he had ever anticipated. He made a decision then, one born of desperation and a newfound desire for redemption. Mike would not let his story end as a hunted criminal. He would use his knowledge of the dark web, not for illicit gains, but to dismantle the very networks he once operated within. It would be his way of atoning for his past, a chance to make right from all the wrongs. As dawn broke, Mike, with a newfound purpose, disappeared into the city's waking hours. His journey ahead was uncertain and fraught with danger, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of hope. The concrete walls close in around me as I sit alone in my cell. How quickly things change. Just months ago, I was Vallerius, the infamous OxyMonster, untouchable behind my screen as I built an empire distributing drugs across the dark web. Money and power were mine to command. Now I'm inmate EP 3491, locked away with the lowest criminals. It's almost funny how a few careless mistakes undid everything. Leaving traces of my real identity online was sloppy, and the police didn't take long to connect the dots once they started digging. Detective Marcus Jones, the man responsible for bringing me down, made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Help dismantle my former supplier network, and he'd put in a good word at sentencing. I didn't have many other options besides rotting away in here. So I took the deal, but keeping my role a secret is the only thing ensuring I make it out of prison alive. Betrayal doesn't sit well in this place. 3 weeks of solitary confinement have passed, each day blending into the next. I keep my head down and don't cause trouble, giving anyone looking for an easy target no reason to cross me. My information must be panning out for Jones and his task force, based on the new faces disappearing from the cell blocks. But it makes me wonder how long until my former partners catch wind of the rat in their midst. That question is answered the day they bring in my new cellmate. His hulking frame and scarred knuckles are the first things I notice, but it's the ice, cold eyes that send a chill through me. There's no mistaking that face. It's Viktor Petrov, my main Russian supplier and the man responsible for 1/3 of my drug empire's profits. We stare each other down in tense silence. I know this conversation won't end well for me. "You've got balls showing your face here, gal," he finally says, voice low and gravelly. "Did you really think betraying us wouldn't have consequences?" I stay silent, keeping my expression neutral as my mind races. There's no talking my way out of this. Victor leans in closer, the hint of a cruel smile playing at his lips. "The organization doesn't take kindly to rats. I've been paid well to tie up your loose ends permanently." My blood runs cold at the blunt threat. This man won't hesitate to end me. Prison be damned. I came here hoping to save my own skin by ratting out suppliers, not paint a bigger target on my back. Jones never mentioned word could get back this fast. I'm on my own now, trapped in a concrete jungle with a bullseye on me. If I want to make it out alive, I'll need to stay one step ahead of the threats closing in. The game has changed, and it just got exponentially more dangerous. Victor's chilling words echo in my mind as I lie awake that night, every shadow and sound making me jump. Sleep won't come easy with a contract on my head. Come morning, I'm the first one in the cafeteria line, scanning the room for any sign of looming threats. At the table in the far corner, I spot Victor and 2 of his men huddled together, no doubt discussing plans for silencing me. Their eyes meet mine, and the promise of violence in Victor's stare sends a chill down my spine. I know he won't stop until I'm dead, and he has the means to do it behind these walls. My only chance is staying one step ahead. I finish my meager breakfast and head to the yard, keeping to the edges of the crowd. Most inmates give me a wide berth, but a few watch me with curiosity, no doubt wondering what secrets I'm keeping. One man in particular, a hulking brute named Drake, seems too interested for my liking. When the yard clears for our scheduled meeting, I make my way to the guard station as per our agreement. "What have you got for me?" Jones asks. "All business." "Victor Petrov is here. He knows I flipped and has a contract on me," I reply, cutting straight to the point. Jones swears under his breath. "That complicates things. I'll put in for protective custody, but it may take time to go through. You'll need to lay low." As if that's so easy surrounded by killers and cutthroats. I spend the afternoon in the library, scanning through old newspapers for any distraction. A shadow falls over my table, and I look up to find Drake looming above me. "Heard you ratted out some suppliers." "That true?" he asks, voice low and threatening. I stay calm, meeting his gaze steadily. "I don't know what you're talking about." Drake leans in closer. "Victor seems to think different. He's offering a nice reward to anyone who takes care of you." My blood runs cold at the implication. So Victor is recruiting help inside these walls to finish the job. "I don't want any trouble," I reply evenly, rising from my seat. But Drake blocks my path, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Too late for that. You should have thought of that before crossing the organization." His meaty fist flies at my face before I can react. I duck just in time, feeling the whoosh of air as it passes over my head. Years of street fights kick in, and I drive my elbow into Drake's gut before bringing my knee up into his nose with a sickening crunch. He howls in pain, giving me an opening to shove him back into the bookshelves. The crash draws the attention of nearby guards, who rush over to break up the brawl. I'm dragged to the infirmary with a split lip while Drake is taken to solitary, blood gushing from his ruined nose. Word will spread fast about our altercation. Marking me as weak and prey, I've bought myself a target by engaging Drake. But standing down wasn't an option either. Night falls with an uneasy quiet over the cell block. I lie awake, listening for any signs of approaching threats. A scraping sound outside my cell has me bolting upright, heart pounding, but it's only the night guard making his rounds. I force myself to relax, knowing this constant state of fear and paranoia will be my undoing. Sleep finally takes me, but my rest is fitful. Nightmares of dark figures closing in jolt me awake at every hour. By morning, exhaustion weighs heavy on my mind. I stumble out to the yard in a daze, barely registering my surroundings. That's my mistake. I let my guard down, even for a moment. A cloth presses over my mouth from behind, the unmistakable chemical smell flooding my senses before darkness takes over. The last thing I see is Victor's sneering face looming above me, and I know this is the end. He's found a way to finish the job where no one can interfere. When I wake, it will be to the cold embrace of death. I fought so hard to survive, only to have it all come crashing down because of one careless slip. As the drug pulls me under, I can't help but wonder, is this how it all ends for the infamous OxyMonster?